See how much money we've got in this wallet. Doesn't look like I'm going to have enough money to finish the review. Just going to have to try something else.
That's just a myth, a story.
Myths often have a grain of truth in them if you know where to look.
And what was it? Time ships of the gods.
Yes, on the time.
Hello Whovians and welcome to my latest Doctor Who review, where today I review Doctor Who Underworld, starring Tom Baker and Louise Jameson. Okay, so Underworld, this is the 5th story in Doctor Who Season 15 and the penultimate story in this season. And the basic plot is as follows. On the edge of the universe, the Doctor, Leela and K9 encounter a minion ship on an epic quest to find their race banks, but their people have encountered the Time Lords before. Okay, so that's basically the plot of Underworld. Underworld.
Later that same evening.
Literally. That is my review of this story. Underworld is just terrible. This story is awful. This is without question the worst story from Tom Baker's era so far for me. So far. I'm a first-time viewer, remember? I haven't seen all of his series, but I just really didn't care for this one. I mean, first of all, let's just put it out there. As I parodied in my opening to this review, the effects of this story are just fucking awful. I mean, pretty much 3/4 of this story, so the last 3 episodes of this story are filmed in front of a green screen, and it's blindingly obvious. It's blindingly obvious how bad the effects are. I mean, let's get one thing straight. This story had a very limited budget, and they threw all of their pennies into episode 1 of the story. And episode 1 doesn't really have as many green screen effects. It's mainly in the set. But episodes 2, 3, and 4, we're in like these caves and these tunnels, and characters are just running around constantly in front of a green screen, and it's just so bad. It's just really, it's almost unwatchable, really, how bad the effects are in this story. And you know, I don't know why. I mean, it's lucky that the story even got made, to be honest, because of the lack of budget. But not only, I mean, that's the worst of it. The technical aspects of this story are the worst of it, but also the story itself. I mean, yeah, there are some interesting ideas in this story, but it's just so boring. There is nothing in this in the plot that really intrigues me. All the stuff about the minions of Minyar, or whatever the fuck it's called, you know, I don't give a shit. The villains are terrible. The villains are awful. The way they dress is terrible. The way they sound is terrible. They don't stand out to me. The masks they wear are stupid. The costumes are ridiculous. They don't pose any threat to the Doctor and Leela or K9. They don't really do anything in the story either. They really don't. And this story for me is 4 parts, but it drags on forever. It really feels like it's just never ending. It just never ends. They don't know what to do with this story. If they wanted to save money, they should have shaved this story in half and just done it as 2 parts. And that way it might have been a bit better. And they would have cut out all the unnecessary filler in the main part of the story. Most of this story is just filler. They're just running around doing nothing. That's kind of what they're doing in this story. I mean, the actors are trying, don't get me wrong, the actors really do try to save this story, but they just can't. I mean, Tom Baker as the Doctor, he's really trying, but it's not his best performance. But he really is trying to carry the story. But even he, I think, looks a bit unhappy with the way this story goes. And even in the story, he doesn't give as much conviction. There's just not much to really admire about this story. There really isn't. So, I don't know what else to say. I'm kind of struck for words. Leela, played by Louise Jameson, obviously this is her penultimate story, so we'll be... As for Louise Jameson as Leela, well, I mean, this is definitely one of her weaker performances, but, you know, she's okay in this episode. She's alright, but at the end of the day, it's sad, because we're going to be saying goodbye to Leela in the next story, so make the most of her while she's there. Even she can't save the story. There's not many moments between her and the Doctor that I remember. She doesn't do anything. They just run around being chased, and it's just a drag to watch. And K9, John Leeson voices K9 again. And K9's good in the story when he has his moments when he can, but he's not in it as much as the Invisible Enemy or even the Sunmakers. He's all right in this story, but yeah, he doesn't do a lot. As are most of the cast. Jackson, played by James Maxwell, he's good. Herrick, played by Alan Lake, is good. Orf, played by Jonathan Newth, he's good. He can be a little over the top. I mean, those are the main people that are in the story. I mean, they're okay, but they can't save the story. It's just so bad. The effects really are awful. Like, they should have just scrapped the story entirely, or, like, as I said, they should have reduced it down. And it's just so boring. As 4 parts, it drags, and I hate to say that, I really do. But what else can I say? It's a pretty bad script as well. The script by Bob Baker and Dave Martin. I mean, this is not a great script from them. The set design, well, for what little sets there are, the set design isn't bad. I mean, obviously the TARDIS set is always really good, and I like the set of the spaceship, and some of the model work isn't bad, but as the story goes on, beyond the first episode, it starts to get pretty technically awful, and that's a real shame. The first episode is the best of the 4 episodes because it looks the best, and it actually builds up the story quite well, but then after the first episode, it just completely sags, and it just falls flat on its arse. I don't really know what to say about it, so... Yeah, this is not going to be it's not a rant. It's not awful. I mean, it is awful, but it's not the worst I've seen. There's far worse stories, but as one of Tom Baker's, you know, weaker stories, it's probably my least favorite Tom Baker story so far. Yes, worse than the Image of the Fendal. Yes, at least that one had better production design. I just didn't care for it. I really didn't care for this one, and I would have been happy to just skip it and move straight to the end of the season, because it's a timekeeper, it's filler, it doesn't add anything. And as I said, the green screen effects are terrible. You know, there is nothing good about this story other than the actors and some of the sets and potentially the music by Dudley Simpson. Norman Stewart's direction is very poor. The story is poorly paced. It keeps moving. It doesn't keep moving, sorry. It just takes too long to bring him and get going, and then it never does, and then the story ends like that. It ends very abruptly. I won't say what the ending actually is, but you have to see it to believe it. It's a really bad Doctor Who story. It's not like offensively bad or anything. There's nothing remotely offensively awful in it. It's just it's dull. It's boring. It's a drag. So for that reason, I'm going to give this story a 4 out of 10. Yep, this season is a very mixed bag. It's a very mixed bag. So yes, and that's kind of all I'm going to say about Underworld. There really isn't a lot to talk about. it's so boring, and the story itself I couldn't really follow as well. I just gave up with it. I really just gave up with it because of how bad the effects are and how boring the story actually is. But anyway, we will then move on to The Invasion of Time, which is the 6th and final story of season 15. I'll actually be quite glad when this season is over, to be honest. I just hope it's a step up from this. And it will be Leela's final story. So we'll say goodbye to Louise Jameson, which will be very sad, but alas, I look forward to it. Okay, so that's pretty much my review of Underworld. Please leave your comments down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And stay tuned next time for my review of The Invasion of Time. So until then, see ya.